Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this week's Tax Rep Network podcast. I am thrilled to have my guest on, and I basically called this the sales pitch, all right? A conversation with Michelle Weinstein, because, so joining me on this week's program is Michelle Weinstein, though many of you probably know her as either the host of the Abundant Accountant podcast or by her name, the Pitch Queen. All right, hence the title. Michelle trains accountants on how to use her unique and proven system to sell more value services, overcome any objection, and have a life full of abundance, right? Which is what everybody wants. She's successfully trained CPAs as to how to actually and efficiently implement powerful techniques, including adding 5,000 to 10,000 monthly packages to 50,000 one-time engagements. Michelle is the host of the Abundant Accountant podcast, where accounting professionals come to learn the most efficient and powerful ways to grow their firm, sharpen their skills, and have consistent increasing revenue. She covers topics and everything from networking, pricing, finding your ideal clients, increasing cash flow, setting boundaries with the clients, and much, much more. So accounting professionals can stop giving away their time and expertise for free, and I'm all over that, and start being paid their value and their worth. And she has at least one, one raving fan on this podcast in me. And so, Michelle, listen, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for doing this. I know you're busy. I know because I listen to you. I know you're busy, and I appreciate, you're taking the time out to get on the call with me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I love doing, normally I'm on the other side interviewing people or doing my own show. So this is like ultra fun for me. So I'm very excited to be here and, talk about all the fun things. So like you said, you never have to give away any of your knowledge and information for free ever again, because I have run into that a lot with a lot of different accountants that I've come across.
Oh, listen, when I do my training and when I do the talks, and so in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be out in Vegas at AICPA. I'm going to be at Scaling New Heights in Salt Lake City. I'll be in Chicago for NATP. Everyone who listens to me is going to get the same message, which is charge for the consultation. For representation, we charge. Why? Because if I do free consultations, do you know what I'm going to do all day long? Free consultations.
Right.
with people who especially in the representation arena, who neither have the money to pay me or any inclination to pay me. They're just looking for free advice.
Right. And it happens all the time. And it's like really understanding, where are you drawing the line when you start, dishing out free advice? I call it like dishing out Band-Aids. You keep giving some little idea that doesn't actually solve someone's problem. When we really think we're helping people, we actually hurt people.
Well, the other thing too, especially in my arena, they don't always tell me everything. Right. And had I had them in my office, if I had them in my office and I got all the facts, my advice may have been drastically different. And I had one of these today. We'll get to the client stories in a moment, but the reason I'm so thrilled to have you here, and if you're listening to this, go check out the Abundant Accountant podcast. You can get it in iTunes and Apple Podcasts. I'm sure it's out in Google as well, although I have an iPhone, so I don't check. Right? But here's what I love about this, and why one of my tax rep members actually put us in touch with each other, and when I got the email, I'm like, who? Like Michelle Weinstein, I'm like, who? And I thought, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I know who she is. And so, I was really very happy to be like, yeah, I got to get her on. You verbalize something, and you do this in a way that I don't know that I have, but basically the need to embrace that even though you're an accountant, and frankly, even a lawyer, accountants, lawyers, you're a businessman or woman. All right. And at some point, if you're in business for yourself, you have to be able to sell. I mean, we don't like to think of it. And for some reason, selling has a dirty word. It is a dirty word, especially to accountants. But the reality is, if you're in business, you have to be able to sell. And I've heard you say everybody is in sales, which is absolutely true. You said, I think everyone is in sales, whether they realize it or not, which is a theme, frankly, if you don't mind, I'm going to try to dive into today because I think it is completely critical. But before that, can you tell only because I'm curious, but also our listeners. How did you end up getting into this niche? I ask a lot of my interview folks this because I just find it fascinating how people end up in this sort of niche. I can tell you how I got into it, but I'm curious how you ended up doing this.
Yeah, no, it's actually a great question because I get asked it, quite often, Michelle, what made you want to work with accountants? Like, how'd you end up in this niche? And so I got a degree in finance, and after college, I started working. I had one regular job out of college. It was at Moss Adams, which is an accounting firm. And I sat in a cubicle. I was there 3 years, and I always found myself like wanting to go to all the client meetings and working with the partners. And a lot of the people I worked with were on the financial side, but I always loved how smart all the accountants were, all the, financial experts. Oh, I did a lot of the stuff in the M&A group. And I'm like, for the last 9 years, Eric, I had a company where I was selling prepared meals, shipping them around the country. I had a retail store. I had a kitchen staff. So I was working with a different type of person. And when I had to close that company a couple years ago, it was like March of 2017. I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to do. But I said I want to work with a really intelligent, smart group of genius people like yourself and others. And I started, working with a friend and helping her out in her business. And one thing led to the next, and I found that there was a big gap in sales, right? Like a lot of the challenges that some of you listening might have, and this might resonate to you. You fear that word sales. You don't really have confidence in your sales conversations. A lot of people I talk to wing the whole sales process. Like, oh, I started an accounting firm, I have to have a sales process, right? Like we don't think about those things. Or, one of the CPAs I worked with, he was saying it took him like 6 weeks for a client to decide if they wanted to work together. And by working with me, it cut it down by half. So if you look at like all this stuff that you have to do on the front end just to do the part that you love, which is the technical side and all the fun stuff behind the scenes, the sales was a big gap. And I said, you know what? I want to start teaching you all how to do this because I love it. And I know you can too. And so many people like, the woman that introduced you and I, she no longer fears that word sales, and her frame of mind has transformed and the confidence. And, she had her firm for over 20 years now, and everything shifted. And now you can actually enjoy not only the technical side, but even the client facing stuff, like how to follow up, what to say to a client, like everything that you don't even think of. So that's how I got into that niche. And I love it. Everyone is so smart and so committed. And it's been so much fun.
Well, and what's funny is, and I just realized it's Carmen Peters is the
Yes.
member that actually connected us. What's interesting is I was there. The thought of getting up and speaking or going on a sales pitch would have been horrifying to me when
Right.
I was at an accounting firm. Now we're talking 20 years ago.
Right.
And what happened is when the great downsizing happened, in around 2002, all of a sudden, like I had no choice. I had to go find clients.
Right.
And now I'm the reverse. I'd rather be finding clients and doing less of the day-to-day technical work because it's just become, you know what it is? People view selling as I'm trying to sell you something you may not want. Right. I view it as I'm sitting with someone and I can probably help them. I can get them to where they need to be. I can resolve their issue. I can bring all of this expertise that I have to the table that they need. And generally speaking, I find if you can explain the value, okay, it's not really much of a sell. They need me. They need the help. And I can just throw out, look, it's $5,000. And they go, ooh, but if I were to say, look, here's what we're going to do. We have to do this. We have to do this. We have to do this. We generally will do this as a flat fee. and we kind of explain to them what it is they're paying for and where we expect to get at the end. What they're paying for is not me to do this and this and this. They're paying for what is at the end. They're paying for the outcome. And when you can get them to look at it that way, it's not so much a sales pitch. It's saying, look, here's what I think we can do to resolve this issue that is causing you this pain.
Yeah, you've got it right. But a lot of times, and what I've seen is that, a lot of the people listening, you might take on every single person that comes to you. And now you've got all this monumental amounts of work, right? And then you still have to meet with clients, and then you're so frustrated. And then, you have to chase clients around because no one's really giving you, a yes or no. And then, you might be sending out proposals still. Now you have accounts receivable, and it's like a vicious cycle, right? Because truth be told, there is a really amazing process that you can do for qualifying your clients, converting the prospects, because it all starts from the beginning. And making sure that you have it set up right from the beginning allows you to even charge higher prices because you've set a standard. And there's so many accountants that I've worked with that, don't have any standards. So we work together on setting standards, so you can see like positive results immediately and really be able to serve the client and solve their problem, like you said, because you are the solution. And that's why I love working with accountants, because you all have the best solutions.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Now, by the way, you mentioned on you did a recent episode. I want to talk about this, but I thought it was great. 6 creative ways to encourage referrals.
Yes.
All right. Which, by the way, if you're listening, is a great one to go and listen to. For those accountants who are listening to this, well, and here's why I'm jumping on that one in particular. What I wanted to say is, for the accountants listening to this, why do you think referrals are such a good place to start? And I'll tell you, because for my tax rep members, when they come in, what I get a lot is this: I want to make the extra $100,000 a year, like Eric Green said. I want to do this work. I think it's interesting. I don't know where to get these people. The first thing I always tell them is let your existing clients know that you do this, because when I as Michelle's background, I get all my work, I get all my clients from speaking, right? I show up, I talk, the accountants in the room refer the work. I had an accountant come up to me. This is an old story. It's on my podcast, but basically came up and said, "I'll pay you if you teach me to do this." And so I end up creating sort of a course, but in order to, which I eventually licensed to CCH, but how do you know if it works? I invite in 2 CPAs, 2 EAs, and 2 attorneys who are friends of mine, and I make them for 8 hours sit in a room and listen to me. And at the end, I said, "What do you think?" And they all say, "This is good, tweak this, fix this, whatever." Well, one of them, Anthony DeLucia, who was my first tax rep member, went home and he does 2 things. He goes out onto his website and puts in IRS representation. If you haven't filed, or if you have a tax problem, and he does a 1-page newsletter to his existing 550 clients that is basically what to do if you can't pay the taxes. 1 page, he took information from my training and sent it out. $140,000 in new business. And what he told me is, he had people calling saying, "I didn't know you did this. My father has a problem. My parents have an issue. My brother's behind in his sales tax." And he said the phone just rang and the emails just came in. And so what I always tell my folks is, the best referral sources are clients who already like you. All right.
Yes. But so, you want to know what the main tip is for that?
Tell me.
Is that you actually have to ask those clients that already like you for the referral. So I work with so many people now and accountants. And what I've found the most is that so many of them continue to leave money on the table because they don't ask, right? It's almost like you have a kid's birthday party. And if you're going to have the birthday party, you have to send out invitations right? Or a text message or an evite, depending on how you do it, to invite all the kids' friends to the birthday party. Well, if you think about your referrals as the exact same thing, no one can refer anything to you if you never ask. And once you start asking, right? Like,
Yep.
I mean, timing's everything, but people love to help other people, especially happy clients.
Yep.
My whole business for our 8-week sales mastery training that I have literally is almost all off referrals. I just keep getting introductions, and from there, then the second thing is not all referrals are good referrals. So being really specific on who you work with, who you want to, attract, and the clients that you want to actually serve is also. But just because you get a referral, you still have to take them through some sort of sales process. And when you ask your clients for their referrals, they always will help you and support you.
Yep. No, I agree. And so I want to ask you, you mentioned on a number of the podcasts I've listened to something called the stigma of sales.
The stigma?
Yeah. Can you explain what you mean and why you think that's so endemic in the accounting world?
Well, I think it's not only in the accounting world, it's in like all world. And I think the stigma of sales is just it's your beliefs, right? It's like you were saying in the beginning, it's like a bad word. And I think the stigma of sales stems from our experiences. And I mean, I've got a funny story. I just shared it the other day, but I'll share it now because this is how we get the stigma of sales. I wanted to change my water service, like a, fresh alkaline delivery, spring water delivered to your house. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And I called the guy. It was a referral. My friend gave me the phone number to this person. And I was talking to him, and all he would do was, oh my gosh, we have the best water. I'm so glad you called. No one else I live in San Diego. No one else in San Diego has this. He just kept selling and selling, and I didn't need to be sold. Most referrals don't probably need to be sold.
Yep.
And he almost talked himself out of it because I was getting so irritated. But the stigma of sales stems from those experiences. You've all went to the car lot before. You've all had a bad experience with that. You've all probably purchased a home and had a real estate agent that drove you nuts. Like, all of these experiences add up and add up and add up, and they create what we call our sales beliefs, right? Selling is, I mean, so many people have shared with me, oh, well, selling's like sleazy, right? Selling's pushy, or like Carmen, she just feared that word in general. Like, another client of mine, Kate, she said, I no longer feel salesy or insincere about closing the deal. Because I think a lot of times people equate sales to being, manipulative, convincing, I've heard. There's so many elements around that word and that stigma, and I'm here to share a different version of it. And once I share with you all of my variations of why it's actually not any of those, that's when things can be transformed, not only with your confidence, but with your practice, which ultimately helps more people. Because one of the best things about what each of you provides is you have a service that people need. Just like you were saying earlier, like, it's not like this is something that someone doesn't need. If you're a business owner and you are, pumping out 250, 500,000 million in revenue, like, you need an amazing accountant, CPA, bookkeeper, CFO, attorney like you. Like, you need all of those elements in your business. So it's not like what you have isn't needed. And there's so many problems that you can help solve, because majority of business owners don't even know their numbers. They have zero idea on KPIs. They are just like loose cannons out there running businesses, a lot of them. So that's the stigma of sales.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. How do you get the mind shift? How do you get, so the accountant listens to this, wow, this sounds great. They call the pitch queen, right? Michelle, I need help. Or I go to your site. How do you get them to go from, there's a different saying, when you talk about like life coaching, you either view life as abundant or you view it as very closed.
Right.
How do you get them from closed to abundant? Because I will tell you this, and if you're listening to this for tax representation, the need is unbelievably huge. There are not enough people doing this. The need is there. There are 14 million taxpayers in the collection division inventory, 7 million non-filers that the IRS has identified. So it's not a lack of need. The need is there. Right. Well, from my perspective is we just have to show you what to do, train you. And if you can do a 1040, you can do this. And then help you get over what I've never thought. I never really thought of it this way, but to get over the idea of just, you got to put yourself out that you do this. And because of the need, it's there. How do you get the accountants who come to you to make that shift? I'm fascinated about this, how you do this, because because in all honesty, you do it really well and better than I do. And so I'm curious how do you do it? I mean, I'll shut up. How do you get them to make the mind shift to, I'm an accountant, I do numbers, that's what I do returns, that's what I do, to I'm actually a business person and I have something people need and I can help you?
Oh my gosh. Well, we would be here forever because it's not only the mindset, it's, also about how you communicate what it is that you do. I think I even did a segment on the elevator pitch on the podcast, so you can listen. I mean, that's a half an hour in itself. So, and also, Eric, I do have a resource that will help on this exact topic. It's the 5stepsToAbundance.com. And it's just for you guys. So it's like a 5-step process for accountants to really start seeing things from the side of abundance versus the side of scarcity. But, here's a quick, simple mindset shift that maybe you could even implement today. Because I always say, or how I interviewed Mel Robbins on my other podcast, and she says, confidence starts from taking action. So I say, if you can just learn like one thing today and start taking action, that's the greatest. But let's just talk about niching down for a second, right? How many times have you heard you need to niche down? You need to, just pick one industry. Well, the accountant with the abundant mindset would, or scarcity would say, well, Michelle, I really need to just take on any client that comes my way because this is really important and I need to pay my bills, I need to pay my rent, etc. But what if, like what I did, I niched really down, right? Like I'm pretty much only working with accountants. And not only that, there's other people that are educating in the world of sales, I'm sure. And, I didn't know anything. I didn't research it. I didn't really even care because no one is me. And when you know your knowledge, no one is you, right? Like Eric, there's not another person like you teaching this. And like you said, there's so much business out there that you need to teach some more people what you do. But what if you had the thought process that there's enough to go around for everyone? And, I'll share a little story because I actually ran into this exact situation a week ago, and I come from the place of abundance. And if there's other people teaching on enrollment, on sales conversions, on, increasing top line revenue, on creating a sales process, follow-up process, what to say at a networking event, all that stuff, well, wonderful. But clearly, I'm still helping a bunch of people. So whoever's been helping the community, there's enough for everyone to go around. And I'm going to this event in the fall, and they said, hey, Michelle, there's someone else who does something similar to you. So we need to make sure that it's okay that we can have you there too. And I said, sure, no problem. And to be honest, I've worked with your community already. So I know what I can deliver on, and I know the results, but I said, I think there's enough for everyone. I would love to meet her and him. And maybe there's a way that the two of us can collaborate together. And they're like, wow, Michelle, you're right. I'm like, yeah, I know. So at the end of the day, they came back and it was another woman. I can't wait to meet her. She also teaches sales to accountants, I guess. And, I never even heard about her, but we come from that space of abundance and that there is enough for each of us. There's enough for everybody. And if we can help, even if I can help 10 accountants, let's say, and she can help the same 10, and they double, triple, quadruple their revenue in their business, then everybody won. So if you're competing with the other CPA down the street, well, maybe niche down even a little bit more. If you're working with, like I just had a call with somebody, He does not work with contractors, restaurants, and manufacturers. Well, if you do work with all three, maybe you just want to become the restaurant expert and only work with restaurant business owners, and that's it. Because when you do that, the abundance will start to come in at a rapid pace that you've never even seen in your life before. And again, if you want to go into all the details, it's at the 5stepsToabundance.com. And it's a 5-step process and a whole guide I put together that you can do all the steps.
So, we talked a little bit, you touched on with the referral, I mentioned the referrals, and you talked about that not all referrals are good referrals, right?
Yeah.
But
so many people take on all referrals.
Yeah. But a couple things. Well, first of all, how important is the referral business, and how do you get your folks started doing that?
Well, the referral business is so important. It's like the number one thing to focus on, especially with the industry and what you all do. The best way to, number one, like we spoke about, is ask. The other thing that I think is really great for, a lot of accountants I've worked with have anywhere from 50 to 100 or 200 clients. What can you do to incentivize them, right? Like, you could offer some sort of reward. You can offer a prize. You could offer, make it fun for your clients to refer. Let's just use the restaurant example, right? A restaurant owner, guess what, knows a bunch of other restaurant owners. So if you do a really great job about sharing with them what that restaurant hey, I'm looking to work with restaurants, I'm an expert. Again, I would not ask for a referral until you have, number one, a happy client, and number two, you really help them out a ton. But it's the best time. And I mean, I call all my past students about once every other month after they complete my course and ask for referrals. Some of the coolest stuff happens. I learn about their wins, what amazing things have happened. If they're having challenges, I also have an ongoing Facebook group where I support in sales conversations and going through different scenarios. I was working with Kate. She was having a little bit of a challenge. We walked through it and she got back on her 2 feet. So many cool things happen when you set out the time to ask for referrals. So that's the other thing. You actually have to block it out in your calendar. So I invite you to go to your Outlook, Google Calendar, whatever it is, and block out, once a month for an hour. All you're going to do is focus on your happy clients and to call them and ask for referrals and just, catch up. So those are a few ways. And then obviously you can go listen to the whole episode because there was half an hour of other things that you could do to get referrals.
Yeah, no. And
but these don't cost you anything either.
Yeah.
I want to mention that. Like, this is not like cash outlaid on the table for this. This is your time. Granted, I know how valuable my time is, but I also know my conversion rate is very high. So it's cheaper than a Yelp ad, a Facebook ad, a Google ad. Like, referrals are great if you work it the correct way. So that episode on the Abundant Accountant podcast about getting referrals is a very good one. I think I don't remember the exact name for it, but I think it was like the 6 creative ways accountants can encourage referrals from their clients.
Yeah, now let's talk about the bad referrals.
Okay.
In lawyer speak, what we normally say is, we tell younger lawyers, you'll make more money from the clients you don't take than the ones you do, because a bad client can cost you time, money, a lot of other money, aggravation. How do you help your folks learn to weed out the ones who are just not going to be good referrals?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really, understanding what you're going to niche down to, like we spoke about earlier. So who do you want to work with? So if it's going to be only restaurants that are doing over, 500,000 in revenue with a net income of over 100,000 or whatever it is, it's getting that specific. And then once you get that specific on some metrics, then it's a matter of meeting with them and making sure that they align with the values of your firm, et cetera. So for example, last week I got a referral for class for my 8-week sales mastery training that I have for accountants. And I thanked the refer. His name is Mike. And then I talked to the client, and I actually made a mistake. I forgot to send him my form, and I have a form that people fill out. So that's a great way that you can screen people so you don't waste your time, right? Because otherwise you could waste your time. It could cost you a lot of money, especially if your time is extremely valuable. So
Right.
I had a call with the gentleman, and he was really nice, but he was not my ideal client. And so number one, I had to go back to Mike and remind him exactly who I'm looking for, thank him for the referral. But unfortunately, Bob was not going to be a great client for us and for me and for my team. And with that client, I said, hey, you might be a really great fit a year or two from now, but traditionally, I typically work with accounting professionals that have been in business more than 2 years. They've done over 200,000 in revenue in their business. They hate the word sales.
Yep.
You have to really hate that word and really have a challenge with the conversions that you're having in the sales conversations, and clients keep telling you that you're too expensive and that you need to think about it. And you're just so frustrated that, you really know something's got to change, and that you never want to do it from being from a salesy place. And you always want to be really sincere, but you don't have a process and you're tired of winging it. That's who I work with. And Mike's like, okay, I got it, Michelle. I got it. I thought he was doing that amount of revenue, but I wasn't 100% sure. I go, okay, next time, let's make sure we're 100% sure. So, from that, I could have dodged a bullet because it could have been a bad fit for my class. So if you do, for me, I do some things in small groups. And if, it doesn't jive well, then it could ruin the experience for everyone. And for you and your clients, I mean, for most of the accountants I've worked with that have had PITA clients, the pain in the ass clients, I've heard some of them have costed, like one client in particular, Mark, he had a client where he was only charging about $5,000 a month, and they had 14 or 11 different entities. He had 2.5 staff on there full time. And I said, Mark, based on what you just shared with me, your 2.5 staff cost you more than $5,000 a month of what you're charging the guy. He's like, yeah, you're right, Michelle. So we did a 90-day analysis, and what he found was that he really needed to be charging his client $20,000 a month. So not only was it causing Mark stress, it was causing the team stress, but he was in the hole, almost $10,000-$15,000 a month and never even charged for his time. So it can really cost you, time, aggravation, money, stress, and it's just not worth it. And, there's a lot of things on the front end that you can do to avoid those types of bad referrals.
Right. Now you mentioned, or at least you hit on my, with my approach, because there's such a huge need, my approach to marketing and getting my tax rep members is mostly megaphone. Just simply get it out that you do this.
That's a good approach.
Well, when you happen to have a hot product or a product that is in massive need, you don't really have to be the greatest salesperson. You just have to get over some of your hang-ups.
Right, your beliefs.
Right. And now you mentioned, the defenses people, put up, I got to think about it. I got, whatever. How do you help your people get past those in order to sell?
Well, we start, if we go through just like the history of it, you start with your beliefs and your sales beliefs and your self beliefs. And then you go through this journey of figuring out, who do you want to work with? And then you go through this journey of having a sales conversation with a client to mitigate the I want to think about it, you're too expensive, I need to talk to my wife or husband, et cetera, right? So we call those objections. So how can you mitigate the objections on the front end to reduce the amount of objections you have on the back end? So it's a full-on process, but one of the first things that you can do today, without going into all the technical structural pieces, is, and this is what a lot of the accountants I've worked with told me, wow, Michelle, this doesn't have to be a confrontation. And I'm like, yeah, when someone says they want to think about it, what if you just say, okay, and just really just listen and understand why and be as calm as can be. When you're that way with somebody, they start to think like, oh, well, why aren't they, why aren't they asking me for the business? Or it catches people off guard. So, not being confrontational is one of the best ways. And the other way is being a really good listener and asking an amazing question. You could ask a question like this. So like Eric, if you said, "Oh, Michelle, your class sounds amazing, but I need to sleep on it. I need to think about it." I can say, "Okay, Eric, I completely understand how you feel. I'm really curious. Like, what is it that you want to think about so I can make sure I get all of your answers of any question that you have today?" And then I keep my mouth shut and I just let you ramble and talk. And I'm listening because sometimes your clients will actually just, if you do this correctly and you really don't talk, they'll just start saying, "Actually, let's just do this now. Let's just get this going. I can't stand, having to pay all this tax. I can't stand having my books being a mess," like whatever they were sharing with you.
Yep.
So really being curious, asking really great questions, and just being quiet. Like, do not interrupt and don't be confrontational, and that will change the way you can change your objection handling, like right now.
Yeah.
It does work.
And also you mentioned, actively listening, not
Well,
just sitting there
actively
letting them
listening,
ramble on, actively listening, because as you pointed out, they're going to, even if one is they may talk themselves into it, but two, they may also begin putting out thoughts and concerns that you can address.
yeah, they will. And typically an objection is just it's an opportunity for them to share, "Hey, I don't have enough information to make my full decision right now." So I
Right.
go through a lot of like those beliefs too, because, objections typically from most of the accountants I've worked with, "Gosh, Michelle, they're just wasting my time." And then I start arguing with them and it becomes very confrontational. And that's the part I really steer clear from. So,
Now,
uh,
do you see a lot of resistance from your folks actually asking for the sale?
no, not after they work with me.
No, after they
No.
work with you, they are the pitch master. Of
They
course.
are. Well, they're not pitching. They're actually enrollment masters.
Yeah. So, curiously, in the tax rep world, we get our money up front.
Yes.
We have to,
In
because
any tax world, you should be getting your money up front for the work you do, for the work any CPA does, for the work any EA does, for any work an accountant does. You should get paid up front, no matter what, on bookkeeping, monthly services, etc. Everything.
I love hearing that, but you'll be amazed how most accountants tell me, "Well, we're not lawyers. We don't do that." And I'm like,
Well,
"Why?"
okay,
Uh, well,
then
well, here's the thing, and there's so many of them. When I'll say, I'm like, "Why do you wouldn't? You're certainly not filing the return without getting paid." They're like, "Well,
well,
yeah, but
no,
I won't."
there's a lot that do though.
Oh, well, no, I know. And they're like, "Well, we won't do their work next year if we don't get paid." I'm like, "Who cares? They'll go on to
Yeah.
the next one next year."
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
I
no, no,
I
no,
don't
no.
I don't understand that speak, but that is one of the first things I address with people, and we discuss proposals. Yeah. Getting
No,
paid up front is extremely important. It makes the service to your client better. It also creates zero receivables for you, and you can focus on delivering the best service and the best work and not having to worry about when you're going to get paid.
no, no. So, Michelle, this has been terrific, and I know our time is short. So, before I
Yes.
ask before I
Okay.
ask my last question, how can people get a hold of you? How can our listeners? I mean, obviously, go out, listen to the Abundant Accountant. It's terrific. It does not. What I think about it, by the way, Michelle, that I think is great is it really is synergistic with what I'm talking about. But my podcast, you hit on things that are great, but we don't also cover. So if you're listening to Tax Rep, go listen to the Abundant Accountant. But for those folks listening to this who do want to get a hold of you,
Yes.
where do they find you?
So the best way is 5steps2abundance.com. You'll get my 5-step guide so you can, start collecting higher fees if that's what you're wanting to work on, really get paid up front and get paid your worth. Also, ways and ideas to collect cash flow all year round. So you can type out the number 5, or you can put 5 steps to abundance. But then you're going to get on my email list. And once you're on my email list, you'll get all my latest and greatest podcast episodes delivered to your inbox on the 1st and the 15th of every month. I chose payroll dates just for fun. So again, I would just go to 5stepstoabundance.com, and that's the best way to connect with me. Also on LinkedIn, Michelle Weinstein, and I look forward to connecting with more of you.
Yep. No, and if you do go out to, because I've been out to the the 5 steps, to abundance, and Michelle will pop up smiling at you,
Yep.
and it's kind of hard to miss. But no, go check that out definitely. So last question:
Okay.
when an accountant works with you, what is the impact that you want to have on them when they're finished?
I love when they say, Michelle, I now am confident in an area as that I was never confident in before. Like the confidence is equal to the technical confidence that they have. That's number one. And having that confidence in the whole sales conversation and process, but really being able to have the position of power and guide their clients so that they are valued and appreciated for the hard work that they do. Because every single person has told me, Michelle, wow, my clients appreciate me more, and feeling really sincere and authentic throughout the whole thing.
I think it's terrific, and I love the testimonials I've seen and the people that have talked to me about you. The impact that you're having is real, and it is it's amazing, because I would actually go a little bit. You're opening up windows that were closed to them. They had them, they were there, but you really have allowed them to open the window and stick their head out.
Yeah,
Um,
I use an analogy like, you have a pair of sunglasses in your car and they get really dusty and then like more dust gets on it. I basically give you a brand new pair of glasses to look at things through. And that it's your opportunity to step a different direction and see what's possible, because not only does it help more of your clients, but you will be rewarded in return.
Fantastic. Listen, we're definitely going to do this again, because there's so much
Okay.
more I want to
I
go
know.
into do. But listen, thank you for coming on and taking the time to do this. If you're listening, I'm going to put down in the description below the link to the 5 steps to abundance. And go and connect with Michelle. You will learn a lot. She will help you elevate your game. And Michelle, listen, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and I can't wait to do this again. I'll be a resident guest on your show.
You know what? Don't be careful what you wish for, because I will take you up on that. All
I
right,
would
and
love that.
everyone can, thank you for listening, and keep checking out the podcast, and continue to be abundant and build your practice, and go find Michelle. And till next week, thank you.
Thank you.